Hi, everybody. My guest on the podcast today is Kay Sargent. Kay is the Senior Principal and Director of Thought Leadership of HOK, where she leads global workplace strategy and interior design with a focus on innovation, inclusivity, and the human experience. With over 40 years in the role, she is a leading voice on neuro-inclusive design and has advised major corporations, governments, and institutions on creating spaces that support well-being and better performance. She's a frequent keynote speaker, author, and advocate, and combines deep industry insight with a personal passion for inclusive environments, helping helping to redefine the way we think about work and the places in which we do it. Fair enough?
Fair enough. Lovely introduction. Thank you, Mark.
You're very welcome. And probably doesn't do justice to you, in fact.
I'm sure it does.
Well, we've spoken before about this, but in the spring, you published your latest book, which is called Designing Neuro-Inclusive Workplaces, with a subtitle of Advancing Sensory Processing and Cognitive Wellbeing in the Built Environment. Uh, but although this is a recent book, it's a long-standing passion of yours and also of HOK.
Absolutely. But I have to say, Mark, my most recent book, it's my first book, actually, because I never wanted to write a book. I really thought I would get through my entire career without ever having to write a book. And I think partly because I wake up every day with a curiosity. I learn something new every day. And I think kind of the second you put something in writing, you've kind of time stamped it. And I never wanted to do that. But I will say that over the years, and it's been 9, we have been doing a lot of research and focus on this ever since we got a question from a client in a meeting who said, how do you design space for someone that's ADHD? And I had an okay answer to that, but I didn't have a great answer to that. So we started to dive into that topic a little bit more. And we just got to a point that we had so much information. We thought it was important to share that.
An issue that's kind of really taken off in recent years, hasn't it? And I think there seems to be two strands to that. One is that the number of people who identify as neurodivergent has increased substantially in just a
Yes.
handful of years, but also there seems to be a greater awareness within the business community of the issues surrounding neurodivergence.
Yeah, I think there's a few things. When we started this, the number was 1 in 8. It is now commonly held that it is 1 in 5 people are considered to be neurodivergent. I actually think that's wrong. I think it's going to be much closer to 1 in 3 when this is all said and done. There's a whole generation of people that were just never diagnosed. You were just that hyper kid that couldn't sit still in the classroom, etc. And we have kids today that are diagnosed early, are well aware of their challenges and their strengths, and are bringing that forward, and the stigmatism is wearing off. And I think there's a whole lot of people right now in their midlife that are also realizing that they were never actually diagnosed. But if their kids have it, there's probably a pretty good chance that one of the parents does. And so I think it's an awareness of a situation that's always been there. I don't think that there all of a sudden is some crazy thing that's radically increasing the number of people that are neurodivergent. I think it's just an increased awareness about something that was always there.
And what do you think are the most common manifestations of it?
I think a lot of it has, when we think about ADHD, when we think about people that are autistic, dyslexic, etc., they all have kind of unique characteristics, but there are common things that are impacting not only people that are neurodivergent, but people that are neurotypical. And a lot of those things tend to be sensory elements in the built environment, whether it's lighting, sound, temperature. Those three tend to be the biggest triggers. And I think we are living in a world now where every single one of us is just being constantly assaulted by sensory stimulation, and we can't handle it. None of us can. And I think we're all masking and trying to kind of block it out. And some people have gotten really, really good at it. But people that are neurodivergent have a more difficult time doing that. They might have a more severe reaction. And so what might be annoying to someone that's neurotypical can be debilitating to someone that's neurodivergent. But it doesn't mean that it's not impacting all of us.
I know you talk about what Neil Usher would call the elemental aspects of office design. So light, temperature,
Right.
and what would he say? I suppose sound is it. Sorry, sound's an
Yeah.
obvious one, but I kind of think that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because um, there has traditionally been an attempt to sort of standardize them for everybody, and particularly with lux levels and levels of acoustic comfort and stuff like that. But when you start to think about this from the point of view of neurodivergent comfort, they take on a completely different characteristic, don't they?
Look, I mean, I have four people living in my house, and the thermostat is a constant battle. Like every single person has a different temperature preference, right? I mean, the thought that we all agree, or there's one temperature, or one lighting level, or one sound level that benefits everybody consistently, is it's just a fallacy, right? And I think we are all so unique. And we go through different periods. I mean, there might be a time when you're feeling really gregarious and you're really happy and you're really excited and you want to be with your colleagues. And there are other times you've just gotten off a horrible phone call and you just need a minute, you need to step to the side and you just can't handle that. We vary personally, and then you vary within the neurotypes, and then the neurotypes are different. So I think we have our industry for the last 40 years has tried to standardize things and to design kind of to the average person doing the average thing. But I defy anybody to tell me who is that average person and what are they doing. And I think we've over standardized these things. And what we have done is created environments where one size misfits all. And we have got to be better than that. We have got to realize that people are different. They're doing different things. They have different needs. And to enable our designs to be able to create spaces where everybody can thrive. And this, buildings naturally have variances anyway, right? So we're going to these extreme lengths to try to standardize everything, when actually maybe we shouldn't be doing that. There are, in every given building, there are warm areas and cool areas. There are bright spots and darker spots. There are louder areas. There are quieter areas. And so we just need to lean into that a little bit more to empower individuals and to give them agency so that they can find the right environmental setting for them.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, the classic example of this, of course, is with air conditioning. I mean, it's not something that's standard in the UK in office buildings, but nevertheless, in you know, the famous example is of the ASHRAE specification for temperature in the US, which is, I believe you can correct me on all of this, is based on the average anthropometric data for a man from the 1960s, something
Yeah,
like that, isn't it? And
yeah. I mean, and it's college age, right? So, I mean, that's not just a very specific group as well. And I don't think that we should be standardizing to that level. I mean, I understand that you need to have certain targets, but I think we need to be thinking about ranges. And after being a designer for 40 years, I can tell you I cannot design a space that is the perfect temperature for every person. But the sun moves, and so should we. In any given building, you have those naturally occurring hotspots and warm areas. And what we need to be doing is using all of that data that we're collecting in sensors now in buildings to empower individuals to understand where it is. So we need to be able to create an environment where when you arrive at the office, Mark, and we know you might have certain preferences, the system can say, okay, Mark, so we know you like it a little bit cooler, you like spaces that are a little bit more buzzy, and you want to be close to these people. Here's where we recommend that you go today, right? I mean, everything else in our life is being tailored to us. You can't go online shopping without having things tailored to you based on your preferences. Yet we go into these environments that we've spent a significant amount of time in, and there's zero, right? And we're all given the exact same thing. We're supposed to be happy about that, and we need to be able to come up with better solutions.
solutions seem to be cultural and managerial as well as by design. Is would you agree with that?
There are differences in culture. There are differences in industries. There are differences between men and women. There are differences between age groups. Yes. And so I think, it's really hard to identify who is that average person that we're designing for. And so I think we need to stop doing that. And I think right now we have a lot of clients that are trying to create corporate guidelines and standards. And I think in some cases they are being taken too far. They've so over standardized everything that they've beaten out any opportunity for innovation. They've made it so that everything is so, kind of in this one little box. And I think in many cases they're doing it because they're trying to make it easier for them to roll out spaces and to have more consistency across the portfolio, but they're not as focused on what is the actual experience of the people who then have to be in that space for a long period of time. And they're all good intentions, but I think those good intentions have gone too far and we're boxing people in too much. And we're not allowing for some of the variances that we really need to be addressing today.
That's interesting. I mean, um, how can I ask a question about that? I think it might be a definitive statement actually about boxing people in, but um, do you think that's recent? Do you think it's kind of a process that was pre-COVID, or do you think the experience of lockdown has shifted the dynamic of that particular issue?
I think people have been trying to standardize and come up with guidelines about how to do that for a long time, right? So that's been out there. I think what has shifted because of the pandemic is that people have a heightened sensitivity to their own sensory intelligence. And let's just say, by the way, I still think on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being none and 10 being amazing, I think the average person has maybe a 1 or 2 when it comes to their own sensory intelligence. If I were to ask you what your triggers are, your preferences were, very few people can actually clearly articulate that. Maybe it might be low hanging fruit, but really have a deep understanding. And I guess a perfect example is if I were, Mark, if you and I were going to go to dinner, I said, Mark, do you have any preference about where we sit? Most people would be like, yeah, no, I don't care, whatever. But then when you're walking through that restaurant to that table, almost every single person is like, no, 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 I don't want to sit there. I'd prefer to sit here. Right. And so I don't think we have a really good understanding of that. I think intuitively we do. We can ultimately navigate to spaces, but I don't think our sensory intelligence is very high because we've just never really had options and choices. We've just had to suck it up. And I want to give you another example of this, Mark. So activity-based working. Love it, but we need to go beyond it. And this whole notion that people are choosing where to sit based on the activity that they're doing. I don't think that is as true as we think. I think more people are choosing where to sit based on the environmental conditions than the activity. And I'll just give you an example that the aha moment that I had. During COVID, when I was working from home, I have a variety of spaces in my house, the kitchen, the dining room, a den, a variety of spaces that I can work from. And I was always kind of moving between them. But the one space that I kind of have settled on is the least suited for the activity that I'm doing. It's got the poorest ergonomics. It's not well suited for the task that I'm doing. So I'm not choosing it based on the activity. I'm choosing it because it's the best light, the best view. It's the warmest. It's the environmental conditions and preferences that meet what I want. And I wouldn't have ever picked that spot if I had been given a choice, but intuitively over time, I have navigated to that. And I think more people are doing that. And I think we need to evolve from activity-based working to environmental-based working, where it's really the environmental conditions that are well suited to support your specific needs. That's why you sit in a spot that seems to be more successful for you.
We need a different name for activity-based working then.
EBW, environmental-based working.
Okay, there we go. We'll
And
start
and
using
and,
it.
and yeah, and Andrew Mobson talks about this a lot. We talk about it in the book. I think it's an important evolution, right? There are certain people that want to be in dark spaces because of headaches. There are other people that can't handle sound masking and it gives them headaches. There are other people that want to be in busy spaces and they like that, right? And so people are choosing the environmental conditions that support their specific needs, I believe, over the activity that they're actually doing.
That's really, really interesting. And you think they understand it intuitively rather than consciously, that
Yes.
where they feel better about their surroundings.
Yeah, I mean, we did a test. There's a sensory intelligence test that just kind of tells you what are your triggers. We had 40 people in our company take this. There was not a single person that didn't have an aha moment, be like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, right? But they couldn't have articulated it beforehand. And I think there's just a lot of nuances about us that we've just had to suck it up. You don't have a lot of choice about, light or color or patterns or textures or the sound level that you were in. But if you are given truly a choice and you have a deeper understanding about what your triggers are, you can make better choices for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm conscious of a few things, certain sounds and whatever, that set me off.
Yeah.
But I've never really thought about it in those terms, that it's an intuitive thing.
I don't think most of us have. And it's interesting because, in the beginning of COVID, which we took this test probably about a year into COVID, that again, that those 40 people. And for myself included, it was a real eye opener. And I think at this point we were probably 3 or 4 years into our research. Yeah, we were well into our research. But there were certain things that just really bothered me. And I could never just really kind of put my finger on it. And what this test basically told me was I tend to be very sensitive to visual clutter. Very common for women, by the way. Women tend to like visual interest, but we tend to be overwhelmed by visual clutter. And it becomes almost noise. And it's like, I can't focus on other things until I take care of this situation, right? And I found that out because during COVID, 4 of my 5 kids were living in the house. And, they'd be up at 2 o'clock in the morning, cooking in the kitchen, making all kinds of noise, but they didn't want to do the dishes because they didn't want to wake mom up, right? Mom, who's waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be on calls with London or, wherever. And somehow cooking and yucking it up wasn't going to wake me up, but they thought the dishes is what was going to put it over. So every morning I would wake up to this just mess in my kitchen and it just incensed me. And I couldn't get on with my day before I dealt with that. And the kids were like, just leave it. We'll get it later. But it's like, it's just irritating me. And I think it's a very common trigger for a lot of people that you need structure. You need some kind of order for you to be able to move on to things. I'm also a list person, right? If I got 10 things to do and one's really important, but 9 are easy, I'm going to do the 9 easy ones so I can get it down to focus on the one, right? It's about eliminating all that chaos and clutter. And that's very common for women. And other people can have other triggers, whether it's lighting or texture or pattern or noise, we all do. But I just don't think we have a really good understanding sometimes of what those are.
That thing where people, if they see um, like honeycombs or something like that, I can't remember what the name of it is. If like that sort of repeated pattern of circular type objects, I
Right,
can't remember what
fractals
it's
and
called.
things like that.
Yeah, but that really, apparently, it
Yeah,
just makes people feel nauseous. In fact,
yeah.
if they see that sort of thing, and I suppose people, if you're specifying materials, you have to be aware of
Well,
that kind of
there's all, yeah,
reaction.
yeah. There's all kinds of things with materials. I mean, I think the carpet industry is one of the ones that's really jumped on the whole thing with neurodiversity and inclusion. And somebody said to me once, "Okay, I don't get it. Like, what does fluoride have to do with any of this?" And it's like a lot, right? And I mean, it has to do with acoustics. It has to do with clarity. If you've got chaotic patterns, people can get very, very confused and disoriented. People with poor eyesight or people that have a challenge with just kind of that vertigo and internal that balance that we have, introspective. And so people can get really disoriented. It can help with defining spaces. It can help with wayfinding. It can help make you feel more connected to nature or less connected to nature. I mean, there's a whole variety of things that I think as designers, we have all of those things in our toolkit that we have to understand when we are specifying things. There is zero, there's nothing that we specify that does not have an impact on individuals, but we need to have a deeper understanding of how is that actually impacting people. These random patterns or crazy things that we're putting might be fun or look cool, but they're impacting people in the space. And we need to really have a deeper understanding about that. And it's not a matter of what we like, it's about what's working for people and what's helping people function at a higher level in these environments.
Yeah. And one of the things you've said in the past is that you should design for the edges. I think that's a really interesting way of framing this. It's like you're not, and it probably comes back to that point about trying to find an average that doesn't exist. You're better off. Actually, we can come back to that on a separate subject. But you're saying actually design for the outliers, not for
Yeah. Yeah,
the
we say when
mythical
you design
average.
for the extreme, you benefit the mean. And it's the curb cut analogy. The curb cut does not just help people in a wheelchair. It helps people with strollers, with bags, with, if you're rollerblading or bicycling or whatever that is, it helps all of us. And, I think every single one of us is being impacted by the sensory stimulation. People that are neurodivergent, though, just tend to kind of be the canary in the coal mine. They're going to feel it first. They're going to feel it more acutely. It does not mean that it's not impacting every single one of us as well. And so being aware of that, include into that is really important.
I know the designing for average is something we did a talk together at the Workspace Design Show earlier in the year in London,
Yes. Yes, we did.
and one of the things we touched upon was like the amount of time firms have spent trying to work out a sweet spot for hybrid working. And so trying to say it's 3 days or 2.5 days or whatever it might be, but actually
Yeah.
that might be suitable for the average person, but that person doesn't exist. So once you specify a policy that says, right, 3 days in the office, the chances are that for the majority of people, that's not going to be the right solution.
Well, let me,
Would you go
let
along
me,
with that?
yeah, well, let me flip that a little bit. Um, wow, you're going to make me say something really unpopular here, but I'm going to say it. I think that uh, we asked some stupid questions, and there are stupid questions. Sorry to say that, but there are. We asked everybody what they wanted, not necessarily what was going to be working for them. If you ask me what I want for lunch, it isn't chicken and broccoli, it's chocolate. I want chocolate for lunch. I don't eat chocolate for lunch because I know the consequences over time of doing that. So we asked a whole bunch of people a question about what they wanted without them really truly understanding the consequences because most people had never had that opportunity. And I think people then defaulted to being very self-centric about this. What do I want? Do I want to wake up today, put on pants and drive to the office? No. Okay. And we need to flip this. We need to not only create spaces that connect people to something bigger than themselves, but people should be thinking first, what does my job require me to do and where do I need to do that? What do my clients need from me? What do my colleagues need from me and where do I need to be to do that? And then lastly, what are my personal preferences? Okay. Because if you're not taking care of your clients and your colleagues and you're not doing your job, it's all for naught, right? Maybe you need to go find a different job that allows you then that is more aligned with your personal needs. If I'm working in a lab with partners, I kind of need to be there. If I am in construction meetings and people are calling me to the site, I kind of need to be there. And I think, before COVID, there were multiple companies that had remote working programs, most of which failed ultimately. And most of them failed not because they didn't work, but they started to erode a connection that people had, and there started to be resentment. Like if I'm at the office, I just choose to come in, but a colleague who chooses not to, is at home, and all of a sudden they need to be at a job site, but they're not here. Who does that default to, right? And so, and the whole thing about mentoring and professional development, architecture is one of those professions that is a apprenticeship model. You do not learn everything you need to know when you graduate from college. You have years of learning. I'm still learning, and I've been in this business for 40 years. And sitting next to people that you can see, God, how did Mark deal with that difficult client, or what did she do, et cetera? All of those things are impacting me and helping me. And so, it's not only the younger people that need to be there, the people that have more experience also need to be in the office to be able to be those role models. So people looked at this like it was a binary choice and a personal preference about where they work. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. We need to start thinking about something bigger than just our own personal preferences.
And that kind of comes back to the point about, if you're asking people, they may not know.
Yeah,
The thing you were saying about it, their intuition might be different to their conscious choices.
yeah, and I don't want to say that I don't care what people want or like. That is important, but it can't trump what your clients need or what your colleagues need. It can't trump all of that stuff. Now, having said that, when we are in the built environment, we have the ability to create environments that do give people options and choices. And that is critical. Okay. And in some cases, working from home might be the best thing for you if it aligns with your job and what your company needs or your client needs. Like if you can fulfill those things and you can work from home, all the more power to you, knock you out, go for it. But there are other professions that just can't do that. Right. And we need to acknowledge that. But we can create environments that can give people options and choices. And we need to do a better job of that because that's where we've over standardized way too far. And we need to really think about individual specific needs and requirements so that we can meet those challenges that people have.
Fantastic. I think that should be the final word. Unless you have something to add.
No, that's good for me.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Always happy to.